got off to a great start. Was there any backsliding in your education? Just when you think, filmmaking's full of things. I know it's full of a lot of useless lessons, like just when you master how to blow feathers out of a fan so you land on some honey.
Film is all about learning something really well and never, ever having to know it again.
Exactly.
And
it's kind of amazing that way.
It is. It's like, on Kids, for example, I learned how to get somebody out of jail. I learned that my lawyers could buy me a condo or, get me a music license, but they had no idea how to get somebody out of jail. And I was like, aren't you all just lawyers? Like, don't you all just, So I found the guy that did know how. But the other thing about film is, film production, I think, it's so heinous in so many ways that you forget about it when it's over.
Yeah.
And
it's like childbirth, I imagine.
Childbirth.
So I hear.
Yeah, me too. Because otherwise you'd never do it again.
Yeah.
And I find myself often on a film set, like the first day, going like, oh, right, I forgot. I hate this.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Like, why
it's
am
the worst.
Why didn't somebody remind me?
And it's the same every time.
Yes, it's the same every time. But then you get through it, and you get, and then you have this thing that you love and you hate, and it's as good as you wanted it to be. It's not as good. It's just, and then you somehow get it out there, and if people respond, you're like, oh, production was easy, you just don't remember anymore.
I saw a film. This is going back again that you directed. How many films have you directed? Did you start out as a filmmaker?
I directed 2 short films.
Yeah, back in the
like
mid-90s?
Like a million years. No, like the 80s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
like BC.
I was at the Wexner Center of the Arts in Columbus, which is this amazing place that has residencies for
artists. Oh, you're talking about that film.
Yeah, well, I know that film was, you made it with Todd Haynes.
That's right.
You co-directed it, but it was part of an installation. It's called Domestic Violence.
Yes.
And I don't think we have that.
We did that in
tonight.
the late 90s.
Yeah, 1996 or something like that. It was the way
mid to late 90s.
The way I understand it, it was sounded really cool, the whole installation. There was a living room with just a typical domestic, maybe something that Ed Lockman would photograph for one of Todd's movies, Far From Heaven or something. And on the TV was this film that you and Todd made using famous violent scenes from Clockwork Orange. Was it Taxi Driver?
It was Clockwork Orange, Dirty Harry, and Taxi Driver, I think, but I might have added one
and 2 or 3 others in there as well. Very, but you had them storyboarded and reshot, but starring household pets and babies.
That's right.
It's really amazing.
So
the dialogue is there.
Malcolm
McDowell and Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro, but it's told by a chihuahua or a baby. And it's just so delightful. Yeah. And I was thinking, man, you had like a secret directing career.
It was really hard to get them to do it.
Yeah, how did you get the chihuahuas to stare in a mirror and say, "You talking to me?" or whatever? But anyway, I really loved it. From what I understand, I just found this out. I know you teach a bit part-time. I do too, to make ends meet. I have no idea why you do it. Maybe it's satisfying or something. You also have a film school. Where is it? What is it?
I've been teaching for years. And I started to feel like, wow, these students are paying an awful lot of money, and they are, I don't feel, really getting prepared for the incredibly changing, insane world of content creation that they're about to be spat out into. And it felt like most of the people teaching at those institutions didn't have a whole lot at stake they'd never been in a position where they had to really earn their living making the content that they were teaching these students to make. And, as I said, in the States, it's insanely expensive. So I started to think, well, if I ever could do it, I would do it differently. And then I was approached by a gentleman named Bob Reeves, who ran a creative writing MFA program, master's program, at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. And he asked if I would be interested in putting together a graduate program in film. And I was very interested in building something from the ground up. Of course, I was also flattered, you know, and it was so much work. But my main thing was I wanted it to be affordable, which it is. It's $10,000 a year as opposed to $50,000 a year. And I wanted it to sort of run on this idea that the students were going to be in constant contact with a lot of working professionals who had a lot of opposing things to say.
Yeah.
And that it would somehow mirror the world they were going into, to have people say, you know, one week like theatrical is dead, the next week saying it's never been stronger, you know, which you know, and really have very intense discussions about what they were going to make and why they were going to make it and who was going to see it and how they were going to get it financed and all of those things. So we're about to start year 3, I think, and you know, we've been building on it. It's a really interesting, diverse group.
This is not just filmmaking; it's filmmaking with an awareness to the super tumultuously changing film landscape right now. It's.
I think it's about also trying to force people to think entrepreneurially.
Yeah.
The way we used to finance films doesn't really exist anymore, but no other system has come in to replace it. And on the other hand, again, you know, in the U.S. at least, we're in a real golden age of television.
Yeah.
And a lot of the filmmakers who used to make, you know, provocative, you know, ambiguous heroes, kind of, you know, like those kinds of movies have rushed to the small screen because they can still make those kind of stories.
Right.
And you could say, like, well, look, you know, when you look at what's happening in the movies, that's not what is happening in independent film, or it's not happening in the independent film that is making it, for the most part, to the theaters, you know?
Yeah.
And there's twilight zones of independent film, VOD, super VOD. I think sometimes there are stories that you want to tell that aren't necessarily theatrical.
Right.
But there's still a great story, and there's a great place for them. There's still a stigma attached to VOD, I think, on a couple of different levels that I'd love to see lifted.
That seems like it's just a matter of time before.
I agree, but I thought it would be gone by now, to be honest.
Yeah, a little faster.
Yeah.
Right now it reminds me of exactly 100 years ago when movieolas were, you know, cross-fading with big screens, and you know, Birth of a Nation is a big screen phenomenon and things like that. And it seems every bit as revolutionary and every bit as job insecure for everybody. You know, and so it's exciting. And when you look back on film history, you go, God, those are exciting times.
It creates opportunity in a great way. And that's the thing to focus on, rather than, you know, like, well, are we still going to be going to the movies? And, you know, I mean...
Yeah, I always thought I wanted to ask you, but, you know, who knows? But whether the big screen movie experience in a theater will live forever. I always thought it would, because for the simple reason that there's no better place for a first date. But then I realized no one dates anymore.
What, they just Tinder?
This is like Grindr and Tinder and things. Right. Yeah, like, okay, I'm in a food court. Yeah, right. Okay, never mind. All right. Yeah. No.
I mean, I think it's sort of like when you look at like what happened to the music industry, and you realize that at a certain point, it couldn't be about selling CDs anymore. It had to be about selling the only experience that was truly authentic, that you couldn't get anywhere else, which was going and listening to live music.
Yeah.
And it flipped. So the one was in service of the other, and then the other became in service of the other. But we're in that shift around, I think, in the movies in a big way, and that's a really cool way to put it, I think, because that authentic experience of going to a cinema, having a collective experience, you know, in the dark. You know, there's a lot of movies, you know, I get Academy screeners. I'm sure you get a bunch of screeners too. And sometimes I put on a movie and I go, I have to see this in the cinema. And it's not always just because it's big. Sometimes it's because I can tell that if I try and watch it in my living room, I'll just get bored. You know?
Yeah. Well, there's the distractions. You're not
Too
exactly
many distractions.
seat-belted into your couch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That I need to be in the cinema so that I have to commit.
I have one last question for you, just because these are two heroes of mine. This is taking you back to undergrad years. Just compare and contrast working with Robert Altman and Cindy Sherman. Because they're both legends.
Look, Cindy Sherman, it was her first film. It was so exciting to figure out ways to help her, to really enable her to take the kind of vision that she has in her extraordinary photographs and help her translate that to the screen. And watching the way she worked with her actors, that was a really fun experience.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
It just was, every day that we went to set, I felt like it was such a great exchange. I got to see her do amazing things, and I got to help her do them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Now, Altman, he was like 80 years old. He was cranky. This is the thing. This is the thing that I feel like we brought to the table on the company. So we would go and meet with him, and he would basically sit and tell us all the reasons why he couldn't do the company. He'd be like, "Hey, girls," he always called us girls. "Look, girls, I got this other movie. I think it's going to happen. And, there's probably not a whole lot more movie left in me. I mean, I'm seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, if you know what I mean. I think you're crazy to wait for me." He was like, I want to earn $1 million on this movie. Like, I'm not going to do it for less. And we said, all right, if you want to earn that money and keep your vision fairly intact, you can't shoot on film. Now, this was pretty early days.
Yeah.
And he was like, huh? And we said, you'll have to shoot it on digital. He embraced that so much. And if you think about it, was digital made for Robert Altman or not? I mean, it really was.
He notoriously never said action or cut, right? He just turned his camera on and waited till the actors started acting.
And watching him at 80 years old just embrace that full throttle, and not just embrace it, kind of revel in the difference and this is new, and I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that. When everybody else was like, back of the hand pressed against the forehead, like, oh, we can't not shoot film. And here he was.
How did he blink even? Or?
No, he was just like, okay, if I earn my $1 million, hey, this is pretty cool.
But he just, sooner mastered something than he was always quick to move on to something anyway.
But that was
pretty exciting about his career. And even if he made a few dull ones in a row or whatever, it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. I mean, seeing him embrace that was a real, I mean, look, I can't pretend, we were not best friends. He tolerated me at best. I will always be proud that I got him $1 million.
Wow.
We did not earn $1 million. But that getting to make a movie with him, I'm eternally grateful for that. But seeing his embracing of an entirely new form when it had not been widely embraced yet.
Right.
In fact, everyone was like, "That's the devil. That's going to ruin our business." That was incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, and it wasn't until Prairie Home Companion that they made a big deal about it being
That's right.
Going
it was
digital.
us.
Yeah, it's amazing.